Good evening and welcome to this Permian Basin Honor Flight Special. I'm Jay Hendricks. The mission of the Honor Flight is to take World War II, Vietnam, and Korean War veterans to Washington, D.C., all expenses paid, to thank them for their service and, for some, welcome them home. We start tonight and visit with a World War II veteran.
Over there today at the changing of the guards, I just broke down. I just couldn't help myself, thinking about it, thinking about how close I came to being maybe one like that.
That you are about to witness is the changing of the guard.
I'm no hero. I didn't do anything that I wasn't told to do and ordered to do. And I was an 18-year-old guy like so many more that were in service. They couldn't take you until you're 18 unless your parents would both sign off on it, and mine wouldn't have done that.
David Stubblefield was 18 years old when he went into the Army in World War II. Turned out to be a good choice. He was originally chosen to be a part of a tail gunner program with the Air Force when he was 17, but changed his mind.
When the time came, there was 3 of us that had been taken out of the 30 that they was going to take in. And the more I thought about it, I was just 17 years old again at this time, remember. But I finally decided that next morning all I had to do was be sworn in, and I just went to him and said, look, I've just thought about this so much, and I just don't think that this is the right thing for me to do, so I didn't.
A year later, he was selected for the war. Before heading out, the war ended, but his service didn't stop there. He loaded a boat headed for Japan.
They didn't even try to feed us but twice a day, and you couldn't eat. You'd have to stand up and your tray would just slide off, just holding it. But I got so sick on that, when I was coming back, I would more than likely, I'd have been tickled to death to pay for my flight back if they'd let me do that, but they wouldn't. But we came back, and it's just as level as this sheet right here all the way home, so it wasn't any problem.
So it was good
coming back.
Stubblefield was one of a handful of World War II veterans who went on the Permian Basin Honor Flight back in May. He says he didn't do anything other than what he was told.
I took infantry training like anybody else does. Our infantry training is basically the same thing as what the Marines get. We learned to shoot every gun that they had and every cannon and everything. We do the same thing they did. We just didn't volunteer like they did. We don't say, put me in, coach, I'm ready,
Stubblefield will tell you some things are hard to remember, but not the memories of his service or the emotion that comes back when thinking of those who served alongside him.
I don't know, you didn't know this, but I just broke down. I couldn't keep from crying when I left. I got to thinking about so many things that had happened to the people that I knew, that a lot of them, was older a little bit, maybe 6 months older than me, and they get over there sooner than I did, and they don't come home,
The big push for the Honor Flight is getting the World War II veterans on the flight first, because the greatest generation, as they're called, are getting older. At age 90, David Stubblefield says he appreciates the congratulations they receive and even remembers one gesture he never forgets.
This little boy walked up to me. We were, dressed like we were today, so we're all together.
Right.
He walked up to me and said, Mister, I want to give you something. And he handed me this thing like that, and he said, you are not forgotten. It's a gold coin like that with that written on it, and I keep that on my desk every day, and I think about it. That boy seemed to be like he was probably about 4 years old. But his parents were there and everything, and everybody was doing just like they did today. So that made me think back that at least those days I was worth something to people.
You never forgot that, did you?
I never forgot it.
Speaking of our World War II veterans, something we like to do is take them back in time to the 1940s with music, dancing, and entertainment from a group called the Victory Bells. As you're about to see, this is a big favorite. They are singing the songs of World War II. The Victory Bells, as they're called, travel the country and put on a show that is aimed at bringing back memories for the men who served during World War II.
It's that moment of recognition, hearing those songs from their past that bring back such poignant and wonderful memories. And it's really just taking those guys back to another time.
Oh, you're lovely. Your smile is so warm. And your
The trio dresses in true 40s style clothing. They sing. They dance.
We should have you up here. What are we doing?
And even pose for pictures.
1, 2, 3.
I mean, we regularly get told that they won't wash until the next year when they come back for another kiss.
You got a kiss mark. He's got one over there. Oh, you don't have anything over there. We'll have to remedy that.
Their focus is on the greatest generation, although on this honor flight trip, they were also popular with Korean and Vietnam vets.
We just love interacting with all the veterans, and it makes us happy being able to remind them of this beautiful era, and we're so glad to be able to give back to them.
Their performance includes patriotic music, a salute to the military branches, and lots of music from the 1940s.
Quite frankly, we wouldn't be in the country that we are today if not for the service and the sacrifice of the men and women of the greatest generation.
The smiles tell the story. For these heroes, this is a real treat.
So you saw the Andrews sisters?
Yeah, I saw the Andrews sisters,
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah. And when y'all was up there last night, that just brought back old memories.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's why we do it.
Oh, yeah.
When we come back, we'll take you to the Vietnam Memorial, an emotional day for those who were on our honor flight. And also you'll meet 4 guys who served in Vietnam. They're all friends. They are related in one way or another, and they all travel together. We'll tell their story coming up. Welcome back. On the past honor flight, we took a large number of Vietnam veterans along with us. Many of them didn't get a welcome home, and many were called names when they arrived back to the States. As you're about to see, this visit is very emotional and healing as they remember and honor their brothers in arms.
We don't discuss our wounds, our hurt. We just
The emotion tells it all.
hide in our memories.
For some of our honor flight veterans, this is a trip they wanted to take, but actually being there brings back memories of those whose names are on the wall at the Vietnam Memorial.
We're proud to serve the country. And remember those we lost for the freedoms that we have today. They paid the awful cost.
But there's always comfort close by.
Indeed, we're blessed. Yep, we're here.
It's kind of hard to explain, but I was taken back by the solemnness of it and all the reverence that's shown by people shown on it. I personally don't have anybody that I knew that was lost over there, but I was over there, and I've know friends who have lost friends over there.
When I started coaching in Allison or Spike Dykes, I came very close to their family.
Or even a small gesture from someone who knows their pain.
Came to this memorial when they honored my son, Ruben Fernandez. They gave him to me at Section 60, and we took care of him in the room, and we knew we weren't going to take him home. And today we were coming here to the memorial, and we said, we're going to leave our roses for those heroes that did so much for us. And we just randomly picked them, and when I would see somebody, one of our veterans that had lost one of their comrades, I would go hand them the rose, and it made them feel so good, and they gave me a hug, and I hugged them. It was a wonderful feeling for me.
Most of these guys will tell you they chose to enlist because they felt it was something they were supposed to do.
It's once in my family. I mean, from back to my great-great-great-grandfather all the way up to my brothers, we've all served in the service in one branch or the other.
Speaking of Vietnam, we met a group of men who served together, traveled to D.C. together, and for one man was even welcomed into the family. As you're about to see, these guys still get along all these years later.
It's Joe Robledo, and this is my compadre Danny Ramirez, and we graduated together, and we got drafted together. We went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training, and then in AIT, Advanced Individual Training, we were both in the same company, and then we were taken to Fort Hood for armor.
They gave us orders to go to Nam, and they gave us 2 weeks leave, and about a week later we got new orders. The guys reported to Fort Hood for OJT on the armor training. So we were there, 90 days?
Something like that.
And after 90 days, we got new orders to go to Nam. So we reported, we came home, went to Nam, went to Fort Lewis, got processed, went to Cameron Bay, got processed, went up to Chulai, got processed to our division, and from there we got to our unit, and when we got to the unit, the guy that was in charge of 20 guys to separate us, he said, "Who's from Texas?" I said, "We are. You guys are going together." This is my son's godfather.
Yes,
so.
I baptized his son, and we've always been friends, yes.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We've been friends and we'll be friends.
And when we came back, my brother-in-law here, he went to Vietnam after it was in the same year, right? Yes.
Okay, so you guys are friends, this is brother-in-law.
Right, and it was routine back then, in our neighborhood when the soldiers would come back, they would inform us and teach us, hey, you're going to Vietnam, you're going to get involved with this and this and that. And by the time we got to Vietnam, we already knew what to do. They taught us more back home than the drill sergeants did in the military, because we knew what we were getting into, and we knew what to do.
Now, how does this guy work in now?
Ernie has married my sister, my other sister, and he was
explain this.
Spring, Texas.
Okay. I joined the Air Force in 1957, March. And I came down, wound up in Big Spring, Texas, with Air Force Base. I was a crew chief and a mechanic on jet trainers. Well, one night, a friend of mine says, "Hey, you want to go on a blind date in Midland?" I said, "Sure, why not?" I wasn't doing anything in Big Spring. Big Spring's a little bitty town. So we came to Midland, and I met his sister. Well, the old saying is love at first sight. Well, it took me a long time to where I could even get in, put in the front door of the house, because her father was very strict. But eventually, they adopted me.
When we come back, we'll take you to the Korean War Memorial, and also a little later in this show, we're going to take you to Quantico to visit a special cemetery for soldiers who have no family to claim their remains. Welcome back to our Honor Flight Special. Another memorial that is a popular site to visit is the Korean War Memorial. We had a number of Korean War veterans who went on the past flight, including one man who served in Korea and Vietnam. He got a special welcome when he arrived in Washington, D.C. For 3 years from 1950 to 1953, the Korean War was fought between North Korea and South Korea. The war began on June 25, 1950, when North Korea invaded South Korea, following a series of clashes along the border. The United Nations, with the United States as the principal force, came to the aid of South Korea. China came to the aid of North Korea, and the Soviet Union also gave some assistance to the North. The fighting ended July 27, 1953, when an armistice was signed. An agreement created the Korean Demilitarized Zone to separate North and South and allowed the return of prisoners. However, no peace treaty was signed, and according to some sources, the two Koreas are technically still at war. The U.S. casualties included over 36,000 dead, 103,000 plus wounded, nearly 8,000 declared missing in action, and 4,700 POW. A number of Korean War veterans traveled to Washington, D.C. as part of the Permian Basin Honor Flight to see their memorial. That memorial features a scene with tall grass and soldiers moving through it to replicate the ground in Korea. There was actually a special surprise for one Korean War veteran as his family was there to greet him. He didn't expect it.
Fantastic, guys. Just a real surprise from my son and daughter-in-law. I can't explain it.
Okay. You didn't know they were coming?
No,
No, they're from Oklahoma.
It's just an honor to have my dad coming on this honor flight because, you know, he spent a lot of time overseas during Vietnam, and it was a real big sacrifice for him to do what he did.
We're not done yet. When we come back, we'll take you to Quantico, Virginia to a visit to a special cemetery. And we'll close things out in this show remembering those veterans who went on our flight who are no longer with us. Welcome back. There's a special cemetery at Quantico, Virginia that reminds you of Arlington National Cemetery, but this one is much smaller and unique. It holds the remains of servicemen and women who died, but they are all alone. One group, though, hopes to change that, all with your help. In Quantico, Virginia, there is a cemetery that features row after row of headstones. On them are names of servicemen and women who died, some from World War II, Vietnam or Korean War, and some served multiple campaigns. But what makes this cemetery different is that when these men and women died, there was no one to properly honor or remember their accomplishments. The Missing in America Project hopes to change that.
Quantico National Cemetery, being a national cemetery, is open to all veterans and to include the eligible dependents of veterans. Okay, and Quantico National Cemetery has been very good to us, you know, with helping us to intern these unclaimed cremains.
On this day, Permian Basin Honor Flight veterans paid their respects, stopping to say a prayer, placing a flag beside the headstone, or just pausing to reflect.
They've been in existence since, I believe, 1983, and there's about 44,000 that are currently interned here.
Anyone can stop by while in the nation's capital. Unlike Arlington National Cemetery at Quantico, they just want anyone to go by and claim these veterans. They say they need a proper burial.
I selected Navy and Marine Corps veterans that were served in Vietnam, like myself, and I put the cross pennies on their markers. I'm sorry I didn't have enough to do them all.
When we do come into contact with these folks and we verify their eligibility, we become the family and we step in and see to it that they're taken care of. It's estimated that there's over 100,000 unclaimed cremated remains sitting on the shelves of funeral homes, mortuaries, crematoriums, coroner's offices, sheriff's offices, state hospitals across the U.S. It's further estimated that 30% of those are the unclaimed remains of veterans or the eligible dependents of veterans.
The next Permian Basin Honor Flight will be May of 2018, and as always, the Honor Flight is in need of donations. If you would like to make one of those donations, go to the website permianhonorflight.org. It was a familiar sight for veterans who served in World War II. In fact, it was the only way for those in the war to get packages or letters from home. That also continued in other wars as well. In fact, I remember as a kid helping our neighbors who had a son in Vietnam gather and prepare packages with letters and goodies to be sent to military members. On the Permian Basin Honor Flight, the veterans also get something they receive from home. On the flight, once we take off, volunteers hand out letters from children in Midland, Odessa.
Mail call, yes indeed. We have mail for all of you.
All of our veterans get the letters, also 2 women on the flight, the aunt and mother of a young Army soldier who died in 2008 in Iraq.
Who wants to be a Gold Star family, but it's an honor, and to know that Marcus is still remembered, that's very important.
Aurora and Alicia Flores were visibly moved by the letters from local children, written by someone who they never met, but cared enough to write a letter.
It just honors my heart. It's just so thoughtful that someone is, you know, besides ourselves, that we think of our son all day, but here's this little girl somewhere in a classroom and they're putting their thoughts together and putting themselves in our spot. It's just so meaningful to me.
And doesn't even know who they're writing to.
Exactly. They don't even know who they're writing to, but they know someone was lost at war and they know why.
The mail call was started with the first flight and will continue on all honor flights as long as children continue to write the letters. For the veterans and those who also lost a loved one in battle, keeping the memory of their loved one alive. As we close out this special, since the honor flight started, we've had 31 men and women who went on our flight who have since passed away. Earlier this week, during an honor flight meeting, volunteers took time to remember those 31 who died. Tonight, we'd like to share those names with you, remembering those men and women for what they did for our country and are no longer with us. Good night, everyone.